We live in interesting times. Today's stories. Russian court jails a U.S. investor pending fraud trial. Police fire tear gas on yellow vest protesters in Paris. Chinese foreign policy official comments on the intermediate range nuclear force treaty in Munich. Iranians cry revenge at the funeral of suicide bomb victims. An Aurora man being fired kills 5 co-workers and wounds 5 policemen. Spanish foreign minister reacts to Vice President Pence's request that the EU recognize Guaido. Guaido says the opposition is determined that aid enter Venezuela and usurpation must end. US and Asian military forces hold their annual COBRA Gold exercise. Plus, aid to humanity brightens a community in Norfolk, Virginia. Hello everyone, I'm Ace Ramirez, bringing you stories from around the globe. And this is Eagle News, Washington, D.C. A Russian court on Saturday jailed the U.S. founder of a major investment firm for 2 months over fraud charges he says were fabricated for use in a shareholder battle. Michael Calvi, founder of the multi-billion-dollar investment fund Baring Vostok Capital Partners or BVCP, was placed under arrest until April 13 as he and 5 others await trial on charges they embezzled 2.5 billion rubles or $37.7 million.
Authorities detained 4 BVCP employees on Friday, including French national Philippe Delpal. 2 other suspects include a former fund employee and someone at another firm mentioned in the probe. All 6 are now under pre-trial arrest. In a statement Saturday, Baring Vostok said the claims made against its employees, and I quote, have no merit. The case has already drawn comparisons to other high-profile probes against foreign investors in Russia, notably one against Bill Browder and the Hermitage Capital Fund. Ironically, it comes as Russia hosts a high-profile investment forum in its Black Sea city, Sochi. Calvi says he is innocent and argued in court that the probe is a bid to exert pressure on him amid a shareholder conflict within Vostochny Bank, which he is trying to resolve in a London arbitration court. According to a statement by Baring Vostok on Saturday, Calvi alleged the charges against him are intended to pressure Baring Vostok to drop its arbitration claims in London or to obstruct the new share emission of Vostochny Bank. Investigators say that a firm controlled by Calvi in 2017 owed 2.5 billion rubles to Vostochny Bank and paid the debt with a 59.9% stake in the Luxembourg company International Financial Technology Group or IFTG, which is valued at 3 billion rubles. The investigators claim that IFTG's real value was only 600,000 rubles. The fraud claim against Calvi was filed with the FSB Security Service this month by Sherzad Yusupov, a minority shareholder in Vostochny Bank, Russian agencies reported. Russian reports said Baring Vostok controls more than 52% of Vostochny Bank, while 32% is owned by Artyom Avetisian. Calvi said in court that he and Arvetisian are tangled in a shareholder dispute and that by filing the claim, Yusupov was in fact acting on Avetisian's behalf. BVCP is a veteran investor in Russia with current and past projects that include the internet company Yandex, online retailer Ozon.ru, several drugstore and food store chains, and Russia's leading online classified service, Avito. Some Russian officials have supported Calvi, with Rosnano board chairman Anatoly Shubais calling him one of the most respected investors, whose efforts attracted about $4 billion in foreign direct investment to Russia.
Наш клиент утверждает, что он категорически невиновен и намерен дальше продолжать борьбу. Все.
Police fired tear gas on yellow vest protesters gathered in Paris on the 14th consecutive week of the demonstrations. Demonstrators hit French city streets again Saturday, marking 3 months of yellow vest protesters as a poll now suggests that most of the country wants them to stop.
The number of those attending the weekly rallies has dropped since 287,000 turned out on November 17, the first Saturday of protests. And for the first time, a poll found Wednesday that more than half of those questioned felt it was time to end the protests. On February 9th, the 13th weekend of anti-government actions, according to police, 51,000 people took to the streets, though protest organizers put the figure at 118,000. Violence has marred nearly every large-scale rally. In Paris, where 4,000 gathered last week, clashes broke out outside the National Assembly building where one demonstrator lost a hand, reportedly as he tried to bat away a stun grenade. Masked activists tried to break down barriers protecting the parliament, but were repelled by police firing tear gas and grenades. As the march continued, vandals burned rubbish bins and cars and smashed bus shelters, cash machines, and shop windows along the route. One of the torched vehicles belonged to Sentinel, an anti-terrorism unit. Interior Minister Christophe Castaner expressed his indignation and disgust in a tweet. Some 550 shops have been damaged by protesters in the capital since mid-November. Thousands of protesters also turned out in the southern cities of Marseille, Montpellier, Bordeaux, and Toulouse, strongholds of the movement, as well as several cities in the north and west of France. The Yellow Vest movement started as a protest against rising fuel taxes, but it has become one of opposition to President Emmanuel Macron's policies. Speaking at a meeting with local mayors on Thursday, Macron said it was time for a, and I quote, return to reason, adding that the authorities would act with greater firmness against violent demonstrators. The Interior Ministry said 1,796 people have been sentenced for rioting or other acts of violence over the past 3 months, while 1,422 more are awaiting trial. Ex-boxer Christophe Dettinger, who became a hero to some protesters after beating up police officers during a demonstration in January, was convicted Wednesday and given a 1-year prison term.
While the United States and Russia have announced the suspension of their participation in the INF Treaty banning intermediate-range ground-to-ground missiles, China has reiterated its willingness not to participate, disregarding Chancellor Angela Merkel's call for international disarmament, which include Moscow, Washington, and Beijing.
On the other hand, China develops its capabilities strictly according to its defensive needs and doesn't pose a threat to anybody else. So we are opposed to the multilateralization of INF.
Amid rising concern about Beijing's missile arsenal and the suspension of a key U.S.-Russia arms treaty, German Chancellor Angela Merkel said Saturday China must be involved in international disarmament efforts. Fears that the web of agreements limiting the proliferation of nuclear warheads and other weapons could be in jeopardy have grown since Washington and Moscow announced their withdrawal from the Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces, or INF Treaty. But Merkel's call to launch a fresh push for disarmament and to include rising military power, China met with a brisk rebuff from a top Beijing official and was simply ignored by senior U.S. and Russian figures. Merkel told the Munich Security Conference, "Disarmament is something that concerns us all, and we would of course be glad if such talks were held not just between the United States, Europe, and Russia, but also with China." Washington began pulling out of the INF Treaty this month in response to Moscow's deployment of a new missile system the U.S. and NATO say violates the accord, prompting Russia to announce its own withdrawal. Neither U.S. Vice President Mike Pence or Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov responded to Merkel's call in their speeches at the conference. Unless Washington or Moscow changes course, the INF, which banned ground-launched missiles with a range of 500 to 5,500 kilometers, will cease to function in August. NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg said he had seen no indication Russia might be willing to back down in talks he held with Lavrov on Friday. The alliance has been urging Russia to save the treaty by abandoning the controversial 9M279 missile system, which officials say can hit capital cities throughout Europe as far as London.
Tens of thousands of Iranians call for revenge at the funeral of 27 Revolutionary Guards killed in a suicide attack perpetrated by jihadists that Tehran accuses Pakistan of supporting.
ما انتقام خون شهیدانمان را از دولت‌های عربستان و امارات خواهیم گرفت و از رئیس جمهور و رئیس شورای امنیت ملی می‌خواهیم به دنبال وعده‌ای که دادند دستان ما را برای اجرای عملیات‌های انتقام جویانه بیش از گذشته باز بگذارند. دولت پاکستان نیز بداند من بعد باید هزینه حمایت سازمان ISI از گروه تکفیری جیش و ظلم و پناه دادن به آنها را در کشور خود بپردازد و بیشک این هزینه برای آنها بسیار سنگین خواهد بود. می‌کنیم این است که دولت‌های خائن عربستان و امارات بدانند صبر جمهوری اسلامی به سر آمده و دیگر نظام ما حمایت‌های مخفیانه شما را از جانیان اسلام ستیز و گروهک‌های تکفیری تحمل نخواهد کرد.
Coming up, an Aurora man being fired kills 5 co-workers and wounds 5 policemen. Spanish Foreign Minister reacts to Vice President Pence's request that the EU recognize Guaido. Guaido says the opposition is determined that aid enter Venezuela and usurpation must end. US and Asian military forces hold their annual COBRA Gold exercise. Eagle News, Washington, D.C. will return shortly. Welcome back. You're watching Eagle News, Washington, D.C. A man being fired from his job shot dead 5 co-workers at a factory on the outskirts of Chicago and wounded 5 police officers before being gunned down himself in the country's latest mass shooting.
The gunfire took place at 1:24 p.m. at the Henry Pratt Company in Aurora, Illinois, a suburb 40 miles west of Chicago, the country's 3rd largest city. Police named the suspect as 45-year-old Gary Martin of Aurora. Aurora Police Chief Kristen Zeman said he was a 15-year employee of the company, and I quote, "Information that we have indicates that he was being terminated on the day the shooting happened." Police Chief Zeman did not have further details about why Martin was being fired, whether the killing was premeditated or whether the victims were involved in his dismissal. Zeman told reporters, and I quote, 5 employees were located deceased inside the building, and preliminary reports indicated they were killed before police arrived. One other employee was wounded, but his life was not in danger. Responding to multiple calls about a shooting at the company, which supplies water valves and employs about 200 people, officers were immediately confronted by Martin. The chief said he shot and wounded 2 of them with a Smith & Wesson handgun. As other officers arrived, they entered the building, about half the size of a football field, to hunt for the retreating gunman and rescue people. Zeman said 3 more officers were shot, but none of the 5 appeared to be in a critical condition. She said after about 90 minutes, officers inside the vast building located the gunman, who opened fire again and was killed by returning fire from police. Witnesses told local media the shooter was a disgruntled employee. They said they locked themselves in nearby buildings as he began firing. Aerial TV footage showed dozens of police cars, ambulances, and fire trucks at the scene as officers with shields entered the complex.
It makes you feel scared. It's crazy nowadays. I mean, it seems like people nowadays solve arguments by shooting nature. That's how you solve arguments nowadays. You shoot somebody. It's crazy. It's too much. Something got to be done about guns.
And instantly when I found out that, I called home, try to see if my family was okay, first thing, I was really shocked that this happened like one block away, anything could happen to the kids that are close by.
In a tweet, President Trump praised the great job by law enforcement in Aurora, Illinois, and sent heartfelt condolences to all of the victims and their families. America is with you. The shooting came a day after the first anniversary of the Valentine's Day shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, where a former pupil killed 14 students and 3 staff, reigniting a push for gun control. In the year since, nearly 1,200 children still lost their lives to firearms, and there have been other mass shootings, including the October murder of 11 Jews at a Pittsburgh synagogue. In January, a gunman killed 5 people at a bank in Sebring, Florida. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, a Democrat, said Friday's tragedy was part of an epidemic of gun violence. Pritzker said, and I quote, "Tomorrow the families of the victims will be less than whole. They join a group that should not exist and yet continues to grow." A coalition of gun control advocacy groups also condemned the murderous attack, saying it was the 198th mass shooting in the last 10 years. Holly Balastic, with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America, said in a statement, "This is a horrifying reminder of how hard we have to work to prevent gun violence. Definitions of mass shooting vary, but a Washington Post database has recorded 162 cases in which 4 or more people were killed since 1966. Many of the deadliest shootings have occurred in the last few years," the database shows. In a presidential message Thursday to mark the Parkland anniversary, Trump recommitted to ensuring the safety of all Americans. Trump said, and I quote, "Let us declare together as Americans that we will not rest until our schools are secure and our communities are safe."
Spanish Foreign Minister Josep Borrell says the EU leaders have explained several times that Europe does not have the possibility to recognize a head of state. He is responding to Mike Pence's request that the EU recognize Juan Guaido as interim president of Venezuela.
Bueno, alguien debiera explicarle al vicepresidente americano cómo funciona la Unión Europea, ¿no? Porque la Unión Europea en bloque no quiere decir nada. La Unión Europea no tiene poder para reconocer o dejar de reconocer a nadie. Eso lo ha explicado la señora Mogherini muchas veces. La Unión Europea no puede ni reconocer ni dejar de reconocer.
U.S. Vice President Mike Pence on Saturday called on the European Union to recognize opposition leader Juan Guaido as the president of Venezuela. Pence told the Munich Security Conference, and I quote, "All of us must stand with the Venezuelan people until freedom and democracy is fully restored. So today we call on the European Union to step forward for freedom and recognize Juan Guaido as the only legitimate president of Venezuela." Guaido, the head of Venezuela's National Assembly, declared himself president of the crisis-racked country in January, piling pressure on President Nicolas Maduro. Pence said that after the United States became the first nation to recognize the parliamentary leader as head of state, I quote, 52 nations, including 30 of our European allies, have followed America's lead. He added, "It's time for the rest of the world to step forward. Once more, the old world can take a stance and support the freedom in the new world. All of us must stand with the Venezuelan people until freedom and democracy is fully restored."
Speaking at a rally to inaugurate a volunteer movement that would help distribute the blocked aid, opposition leader Juan Guaido, recognized as interim president of Venezuela by some 50 countries, says their movement is deeply determined that the U.S. humanitarian aid piling up in Colombia near the Venezuela border will enter the country and that the usurpation of the government come to an end.
Es profundamente determinado no solamente que ingrese la ayuda humanitaria, sino a que cese de una vez la usurpación, porque con el cese de la usurpación vendrá la libertad, vendrá el cese de la pobreza, vendrá el cese de la emergencia humanitaria, porque no es solamente...
The US and Thailand hold the annual joint COBRA Gold, the largest US-led military exercise in Asia, involving grueling drills in the Thai jungle, war games, humanitarian assistance, and disaster relief exercise. This year's 11-day exercise is the 38th edition, which sees 4,500 US personnel participate directly in the exercise.
With weapons drawn, camouflage troops leaped out of amphibious assault craft while explosions sounded and parachutists glided in from above as the annual COBRA Gold War Games took over a placid Thai beach on Saturday. Now in its 38th year, COBRA Gold is one of the largest military exercises in Asia, bringing thousands of forces from the United States, Thailand, and other countries together for 11 days of training on Thai shores. This year's drill includes some 2,000 U.S. Marines, 1,000 U.S. soldiers, and hundreds from the country's Navy and Air Force. On Saturday, U.S., Thai, and South Korean forces descended on Namsai Beach in Chonburi Province in a joint drill intended to simulate securing the territory.
The whole reason that we're here is so that if something happens anywhere and we have to work together, it's easier for us to blend when it really matters. And it's also just fun to be able to meet other people from around the world and just collaborate and meet and see how we're similar, how we're different.
That a lot of our tactics and our procedures are more similar than what we originally thought. So, I mean, you think you come in learning things, but when they're operating the same way that you are, it's a pleasant surprise that you don't really need to learn much because everyone's already operating the same.
Helicopters buzzed overhead and fighter jets roared across the skies. COBRA Gold exercises span air, land, and sea and feature a jungle survivalist session where participants take turns drinking blood from a severed cobra and snacking on insects and scorpions. Singapore, Japan, Indonesia, and Malaysia also took part in the war games. A 2014 army coup in Thailand tested ties with Washington, and the kingdom tilted towards China with high-profile arms buys. But U.S. military sales continued, and the two countries have upped their engagement under U.S. President Donald Trump, who has stepped back on human rights issues and invited junta chief Prayut Chan-o-cha to the White House. Prayut, who led the 2014 coup, is standing for prime minister in elections set for March 24.
When we come back, a heartwarming story in Norfolk, Virginia. Eagle News, Washington, D.C. We'll be right back. This is Eagle News, Washington, D.C. I'm Ace Ramirez. Aid to Humanity Warm Hearts in Norfolk, Virginia, with free winter season essentials. Eagle News correspondent Heather Canlas reports.
Free medical checkups, free clothing, free food, and free entertainment. All these are happening today here at the Military Circle Mall in Norfolk, Virginia, where the Iglesia Ni Cristo is holding an Aid to Humanity event, reaching out to hundreds of residents.
So far we have more than 400 people, guests, who have actually arrived. Not all of them registered, and we still have people coming in, availing of the services and goods that we provided. One of the reasons why we help the people here in Norfolk, Virginia, is because this is a low-income community, a neighborhood that's seen its up and downs. Some of them are unemployed right now. A lot of these people are from shelters, and they don't have a place to stay. Some of them are actually homeless. And so providing for them, even just a little that we can give, goes a long way, especially when it comes to basic necessities such as food and clothing. Especially this time of the year here in Virginia, it's very cold. And so a lot of the clothing are winter clothing and jackets for our friends and guests.
We are definitely a huge military town, and we saw it during the holidays where the sales were a little declined, where more people were not able to shop like they would normally shop. So it's definitely affecting Hampton Roads, and you can see it with sale declines. Oh, it's a major help. You know, with you not either. We have so many hundreds and hundreds of homeless people here, thousands. And for them to be able to come to this event and get those things and not have a lot of people who don't have health insurance, they're able to get the free medical screenings. That's amazing.
It's a very, very sad time for the country. A lot of people are getting their power cut off, not able to pay their rent, not able to put food on the table. And it's just a very, very sad time for our country right now.
It'll help a lot of people have something to do, you know, look forward to doing something, you know. It's bad out here now, you know, the struggle is real.
It brings people together for one, it feeds them, it gives them clothes. This time of the year it's pretty bad outside. So with guys like you bringing this to the community, it really helps out. It gives hope to people.
It helps the community tremendously because, like I say, a lot of people don't have paychecks coming in. Anytime they can get food, clothes, especially when you have little ones involved, it's very beneficial. And I don't think the government looks at events like this like they should. Most definitely, anything that benefits the community benefits everybody in the long run.
Oh, I love the events like this because it's a community. It brings everybody together. And I really believe we all need to join together. We need to stick together.
Oh, we have a lot, like the goodies, the canned goods, the toiletries. We also give out medical services and also food.
The Aid for Humanity activity that we are doing today, we are united with the entire church throughout the entire world. Every district around the world, whether we're in the Philippines, America, Europe, we're conducting this all around the world so that we can help the people around the church, around in our community. We're not only helping the people here by giving them free food, free clothing, free care packages, but we're also bringing life to this mall. This mall hasn't seen this many people before in years.
Similar outreach events like what's being held here today is happening all around the globe, sponsored by the INC's Aid to Humanity Project. From Norfolk, Virginia, I am Heather Canlis, and I am one with 25.
Thank you, Heather. That is today's Eagle News, Washington, D.C. Join us tomorrow for stories that matter to you. Visit our websites at eaglenews.ph and eaglenewslive.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/eaglenewsph. Thank you for watching. I'm Ace Ramirez. I'm one with 25.